Hey, friendos! In this episode, we chatted with Mia Simone, an Avant-Garde Intuitive consultant and coach. We talk about her development over the years and also mathematics, because Mia says that life and intuition is all a bunch of equations. She's very smart, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of what she said. But that's why we're here. I'm your host, Lauren.
And I'm Howard Stern with Tourmaline.
AKA Frank.
Yeah.
We are a married couple learning how to develop our own intuition, and this is episode 36 of Clairvoyaging. Wayfeather Media presents Clairvoyaging.
That's how it's done.
With what?
With having a podcast.
Oh, okay. Because you played the guitar for a second.
Here.
I was like, they couldn't hear that.
A little flat.
Wow. Yeah, that
flat.
needs to be tuned.
Well, no kidding.
Guys, what's going on?
How's it going, friends?
Frank,
Mm-hmm.
you feeling hot and good?
Hot and good.
Frank?
Yeah.
Guess what? We've got some coffees.
Someone bought us coffees.
Yeah. You know what? Actually, okay. Carol, friend of the show.
Carol.
We love Carol.
Carol's back at it.
Yeah. She bought us coffees, but also someone bought us coffees.
What do you mean?
Their name is someone. So it said someone bought you coffee.
Oh.
So thank you, someone.
Thank you, someone.
Yeah. That's so nice.
That is very nice.
They had a really nice note, too. They said, I love your podcast. You guys are so real. Frank has such a great radio voice for reals.
Wow.
With a Z.
That's nice.
It's also true. It says, I just started listening a few days back and I'm on episode 24 currently. That's amazing.
Oh, the fast track.
Yeah.
Way to go.
I know. Are you tired of hearing our voices yet? It's
Gosh.
like if you're like mainlining Lauren and Frank for a couple of days, so it's got to be.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I feel bad for you, and also thank you very much.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And also thanks for the compliment on my voice. Funny thing, I've always believed that I had a weird voice. I describe my voice as I'm either like choking on a hot dog or I got marshmallow stuck in the back of my mouth.
No, you've gotten a lot of great feedback on your radio voice.
Thank you.
So yeah, kudos.
Gosh, confidence.
The rest of this says, I'm supplying some coffee in order to help me with my own personal clairvoyaging experience.
Oh, let's
I love
do
your
it.
show.
We're on it together.
How fun is that?
Yeah.
Okay. And also Carol gave a nice note about putting positive affirmations on a Post-it note. Cause I had a recent TikTok video where I was saying, I keep looking for meditations that are helping me with my limiting beliefs. So I think she's giving me a little bit of advice to put a Post-it note somewhere that has a positive, kind affirmation.
You know what? Yeah.
Thank you, Carol.
I've gotten around to like framing like quotes and stuff that I like around the house, and I'm not opposed to sticking Post-its everywhere.
Yeah.
Good note, Carol.
Yeah.
Good Post-it note, Carol.
Yeah. So I think that's what we've got as far as updates go. We have a great guest. Her name is Mia Simone.
Mia Simone.
Frank stumbled upon her.
Yeah. A few episodes back, I had mentioned that I was looking for some local talent just to see what was out there, in the like greater Los Angeles area. And I just went on to Yelp and I found this amazing, highly rated psychic named Mia.
Yeah.
And I reached out. I said, wait, this is cool. She is self-described as an avant-garde intuitive. And I'm like, before I even want to have her on the show, let me give her a call and talk to her because I've got some questions because this sounds really cool. So I talked to her for 2 hours before we ever interviewed her. And man, she really like opened my eyes on a couple of things, gave me some things to practice. And
you were like, you told me, like, you're like, I feel like you guys will immediately get along.
Yeah, there's some.
And we did. Like, it was like, oh, I know you or something.
Yeah, there's
some
energetic similarity here that I picked up on.
Very, very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, we're super cool. And then I'm like, Mia, come on the show, talk to Lauren, and she came. So this is that.
This is that. there's stuff that we cut out because it was such a long conversation.
We talked for 2 hours. So, and the episode's 1 hour long. So a lot of it got super personal. Not that we're not okay with sharing the personal deets with you, but, maybe it was a little boring for you.
Part of it,
very exciting for us.
I had to pause because I was having like a sinus thing. I said, sorry, I have allergies. And she's like, are you sure it's allergies?
we got into energetic blockages and everything.
Yeah.
So it's very cool. Mia's amazing.
Yes. So please enjoy her as much as we did.
Yeah, do that.
And away we go. Just like the horses.
All right.
Mia, thank you so much for joining us today on Clairvoyaging. You call yourself an avant-garde intuitive. So can you tell us a bit about yourself and what brought you to the work that you're doing now as an avant-garde intuitive, which I love that title.
Thank you. And thank you so much for both of you having me. I think you're both amazing people. Just want to say that.
Oh, thank you.
I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. And it's kind of interesting because I grew up in a time where there wasn't internet. I was in a small town in Oregon, and there were people across the street who were constantly pushing Bible study and were telling me like I'm possessed and things like that. I had a very natural ability. And it started to really frighten me that I was evil, or that being able to know things or see into the future was something evil. So it took me a very, very long time to kind of overcome that feeling. And I worked in corporate America for a very long time. And I suppose about 20 years ago, then, someone just randomly said, I think you should be a professional psychic because it seems like you're very sensitive. And then my husband told me that people are constantly asking, me questions. Is the plane going to crash? And for insight into things. And he said, perhaps I should think about getting out of corporate America because I'd worked for investment banking, some pretty heavy hitters. And he suggested I get out of corporate America and maybe do, readings. And he didn't even really know what that was at the time. Which was interesting. And I said that, I have no idea how I do this, though, for certain, or where this information comes from. And he said, it's okay because some presidents ran the entire country without knowing what they were doing, not mentioning any names. But that didn't frighten him. So that was really encouraging to me. And so I started taking classes, and I kind of my entire life read a lot of books about just energy and, things of that nature. And it was always curious to me that I was really able to predict the future and through dreams, through thoughts and feelings, or, always kind of protect myself when I was younger as to, who I should not be taking a ride with or things like that. And so I became very curious. And also I had passed when I was a baby. I died briefly. And I do remember that. And I later on read a book called Where God Lives by Dr. Melvin Morse. And he describes, he was a pediatrician, and children who would cross over and then come back from the other side and be able to know all kinds of things about the future. And, he followed these children for years after these events. And it got me really interested. I really resonated with that and feeling that, sometimes when our brain is deprived of oxygen, it like accentuates other areas of, our brain that, perhaps isn't a normal process of life. And it enables certain people to see things on like a subatomic particle level, like very, deep patterns and things like that, that essentially is all connected to mathematics. If we look at sacred geometry or anything like vectors and abstract mathematics, things like that, everything on this earth can be reduced to a mathematical equation. So I personally love helping people, and I would like to volunteer. And I realized the easiest way for me to help people is to help give them insight into feelings or healing from the past, things about the future. And that's what also got me interested. And that's how I would, kind of maximize my ability to help people. And I just found it fascinating, our own minds and energy. It's like an endless topic.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a lot, I know.
No, it's great.
It's so great. I'm so curious about, you died when you were a baby and you remember that?
Yeah, the beginning is a good place to start, I guess.
Yeah.
I do, yes.
You do?
How old were you?
It was when I was first born. Like, I passed away, and just for probably less than a minute, like I just stopped breathing and just was, I crossed over to the other side. And the one thing I remember so specifically, though, was I saw a man, and he looked to me like your typical GQ Jesus that we have here, blonde hair, blue eyes, white man, and which I know now probably, Middle Eastern. The Bible explicitly says he didn't look any different from anyone else, so probably doesn't look like that. However, I asked him at the time if he was the Messiah, and he said no, he was appearing to me in that way because he didn't want to frighten me, and it's what I wouldn't have recognized him. Now I think about him thinking, because if he had appeared as a Buddha, or, you look around the hospital, you see crosses or images of Jesus, and I would have been like, who the heck are you? And that also led me on a very deep journey, just of self-exploration as, what really, what is God? Who is God? And I realized that God is like energy, and there's a unified field of consciousness that is God, that appears to us in many different ways and forms on earth, and when we pass. And it's been quite a journey.
Yeah so you, was it like, was one of your parents like, you died, like you and old enough to talk about any of this? Was this a conversation that like your parents had where you're like, oh yeah, and I know that, and I remember?
Oh, definitely. At the time, obviously as a baby, I couldn't articulate this to my parents. However, how this really got started when I talked about it was they actually they were Catholic at the time. They had a father come to the hospital, and he gave me the last rites.
Wow.
And so I definitely passed. And so later on, it came up. And the first time I remember it coming up, I don't recall how old I was, but I remember seeing across the street, and the, fundamental Baptist lady who was pushing her religion on everyone, that they had a picture of him, and the nails were here in his palms. And I looked at that and I said, nope, that's not. I remember them specifically being here. And I thought if you really think about it, it wouldn't have been enough, like, there to hold someone up on a cross. And I got into an argument because I said, no, I've seen Jesus, and the holes are here, which later on, I think pretty much came out as fact at some point. And I said, that may be how we view Jesus, but that's not what he really looks like at all. I can't tell you what he actually looks like, but that created quite the storm, in this little town. And I talked to my parents about it. I'm trying to remember. I really can't, because they lived across the street pretty much ever since I can remember. But I want to say at that time, maybe I was like 6, maybe.
Wow.
That came up. Yeah.
That's quite,
yeah.
Yeah, that would create quite a stir.
Yeah.
Like,
it really did. And they felt kind of offended that like, oh, sure. Yeah. You saw Jesus. And,
right.
know. But on the other hand, I thought at that time, just all we had access to, we didn't even have cable TV. We had the rabbit ears, that you get 3 channels. And so I don't know where else I could have gotten that idea, because I'd never been exposed to any type of pictures other than what people displayed.
Yeah.
And so, and I wasn't giving up on arguing with her.
Right.
Look, everybody wants you to see Jesus until you do. And
exactly. I think the other thing that she found incredibly disturbing and unacceptable was I said that, all of these cultures, and if you look like Muhammad, Buddha, the religious, it's created around the culture so people can make a deep connection with that. And that was apparently very upsetting to certain individuals at the time, because they feel like, Jesus is the only one.
Of course.
And,
yeah.
Where I feel like it's just one field of consciousness.
So growing up in that environment, you said that your parents were Catholic at the time. When did a shift eventually occur, and how much of your original faith and belief system were you able to retain after you had started developing your own intuition?
Well, I think the most profound things I can remember, for example, my neighbor we lived on a really high hill, and my neighbor was getting in his car to go down the hill, and I ran out and I begged him to not get in the car. I told him the brakes are going to go out. And he kind of was just laughed at me, and I was just a little kid. And so, he got in the car and he wasn't injured seriously. And fortunately, there was a slope going up, but, it was quite a scary ride. But yeah, his brakes did go out. And,
oh my God.
So some people, it was kind of divided, thought maybe I was possessed by the devil, but my parents knew that I was a good, kind person, and they really started paying attention. And of course, I told them that, Jesus has these gifts, and it says in the Bible, we too are bestowed with those gifts. So I didn't really find it really unusual at the time.
Yeah.
And that's how their beliefs started changing.
That's so,
wow.
I mean, that's, there's only two ways people know that the brakes aren't going to work. If it's you have a special gift, or you're the one that cut the brake line in the first place.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go ahead and guess that the second one wasn't you. That's interesting.
No, I didn't even know whose car it was or anything. So I didn't know how to cut brake lines at the time.
Did you feel that judgment when you were younger from the more faith-based people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was awful. And I was so sensitive and like such an empath that I felt very isolated. And very uncomfortable. And I was kind of always an outcast at school. I didn't grow up in a, really good family. So, there were a lot of run-ins with the law, never with myself, but with everyone else in my family. And so we kind of already had a bad reputation, and it really wreaked a lot of havoc, definitely.
Were the kids at school, was there like, oh, there goes Mia, she's gonna know your future? Was there stuff like that, or was it just? Did other people know that?
Yeah, because I would start saying things, or just saying things to people that I had no way of knowing. But I think it was more just I'm possessed in terms of oh great, her family, she's. They're all felons, and now she's possessed.
Oh my God. Man. Yeah.
It was a lot of pressure.
That's rough.
And yeah, and if we look back historically, like at movies and things, and anything that was like popular growing up in the 70s, and psychics were always like an anomaly, like they were albino, or
Right.
like some, like they always had to be some just odd character.
Or they came out of some kind of like really intense situation, stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But it wasn't accurate at all, the portrayals. So,
right.
Yeah.
Do you think growing up in a not great family situation was almost like School of Hard Knocks training for intuitive development for you, or you had to like kind of know what was going on and be a little bit more aware of your surroundings?
100%. Yeah. Because when it was quite a violent household to grow up in, and so it invites other violent people, and so you become hyper vigilant. And I truly believe that intuition is there as it's just a survival skill. If you think of the caveman days, you had to know where to go to get food, or somebody's chasing after you. And I think that a lot of empaths, or people that are very sensitive to shifting energies, just became hyper vigilant as children and learned to protect themselves that way.
Sarah Reeves talked about that too. Yeah, we had a guest that like talked about like, a kid who has like a tormentor that is, they become aware of like when that person is going to come back, and their intuition becomes really strong because they're like, oh, I can sense their energy and I need to kind of protect myself or be ready or whatever. So
exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Did you use like your fundamental religious background? Did you like build upon that and kind of grow, or was there stuff that you just dropped that you like wasn't serving your more enhanced knowing?
I tried to use it at first, but over the years, there were things that I began to drop. And I think primarily because, when I'm in a session, I have to read from a space of neutrality, and I can't really read from any type of religious beliefs or any belief systems for that matter. I just look at the energy. So I feel like because of all the judgment, and I think in many, many cases, religious people are by far, a lot of them are extremely judgmental, and not meaning to just say blanket statements, but I found that to be true, because if you don't believe what they believe, then something's wrong with you. And I disagree with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Like while you were doing corporate work, was there a lot of turning off your intuitive knowing and stuff like that? Or was that still coming out?
I don't know if I can ever really turn it off.
Yeah.
I think more, prior to really working with it, I think more like I gave myself a lot of invalidation, thinking I must have made that up, or,
oh, really?
Finding, it was really difficult, but it was really a struggle, but you can't ever really turn it off.
Right. Did you have a lot of people kind of, did it feel like people were kind of using your ability as like a parlor trick almost, where they'd come over and be like, you got any, what?
Well, yeah, wait a minute.
Are you reading?
She was in investment banking, and she like has some predictive abilities. I can imagine that would come in handy at some point. Did any of your like peers know that how intuitive you were?
I wasn't really high enough up to, make decisions in terms of, I was never a banker. So I was very hesitant to share any insights, although I can't recall what year it was. I know it was the 80s. It was like Black Monday when the stock market took a tumble, and so many people lost their fortunes. And I did tell someone I was working with at the time, and he took most of his money out of the stock
No
market
way.
and it saved him.
Whoa, really?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
You said like something's going to happen soon, and
I could feel it. Yeah. It just felt like dark, and it just was a feeling of just like falling and seeing all this money just kind of fall into almost like a whirlpool or something.
Whoa.
And,
whoa.
Yeah. And I think I had told him that like it wasn't that many days prior to that event. And so, yeah, he pulled most of his stock out.
That's crazy. So let's see, you talked about how your abilities present themselves. You talk about how there's like a math element to it. And now you're mentioning that like you also kind of feel stuff too. Is there a typical way that like something presents itself to you? Or what are you mostly like receptive to? What are you looking for?
Over time, it's consistently changing in terms of how I'm interacting with the energy, because the more I know, the more various ways I'm able to interpret energy. So, if I'm out in the world, a lot of times it just mostly, I think, comes up as a feeling or a flash of something, or, something's off. Think like predictions we have about the future, they do tend to be more negative because it is built around survival. So
Sure.
Oh,
it's quite difficult to, build the ability to interact with the energy in a way that you can derive more positive information out of it. But there's so many different ways to look at it, because everything is cyclical by nature. The sun, the moon, the earth, summer, winter, spring, fall. We all create our own cycles and patterns, and on a day-to-day basis. And I think also now with technology and the thousands of choices we make in a day, like it's consistently changing. And then we take into account the fact that, guess what? Time doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
It's just a common agreement, right?
Right.
As we look at the tides and, the movement of the stars. And so it is making it more and more difficult to kind of understand the element of time. And yeah.
Now, what kind of services do you offer or provide? Like, do you do readings? Do you do coaching? Like, what are your main things?
I do both. When I do the coaching, it's creating an intuitive package that essentially, for example, if I ask you, what is it that you would like to use this for, more for work, or like you could use it self-esteem, like investments, anything. And then you kind of start to build your skill around there. And also each of us have some are empaths. There's essentially 3 different types of intuition. There is analytical intuition, believe it or not. And then there's subtle memory recall intuition, which is like observing people and then later on going, hey, something seems familiar there, because oftentimes people like scammers or, just bad people, they have very similar mannerisms, tonalities, things like that. And then there's just the, intuition that we're born with. So you can understand how to develop those and merge them and tailor make it to how it's going to help you to evolve in your own life. So I do that, and one-on-one, and it helps if someone is, making several appointments, because then they can kind of see how they're interacting with it in their life and how to maximize the flow of energy and how to shift it. Especially if we look at physics and like choice points and things like that, and be able to observe the energy and see how is it flowing and how can I maximize that right now. And then I do readings, and the readings I do are, I call them intuitive readings for life, primarily because it's not that I don't necessarily believe in mediumship. However, I find spirits that show up so far and few in between. And when they do show up, something very specific. And that does happen on occasion, but I prefer to stick with live situations.
Yeah. Okay. So you're reading people, energy.
Yeah. Heal from something or guide them about, love, career, finances, things like that. So I love doing readings. And that was the other thing is, I was not only fascinated with energy and physics and mathematics, but I love talking about problems and helping people.
That's so cool. That's like, now I'm like, well, everyone that we talk to, I'm like, I want to talk to you.
Thank you.
That's so the decision point thing is like, do you help with like, you have this mindset about this and like, let's let go of that. And how do you like move it to something more positive?
Yeah, it's so different every time. It's different because, people are just so vastly different in their beliefs and the way that they utilize and run their energy, the way they observe situations, it's everything's so different, and which is beautiful. But I always feel like I personally have to be in a state of educating myself and growing, because if I start to feel stuck and I'm not growing in my own life, then it makes me feel like I have an inability to help people. So I try to keep educating myself and stay out of that stuck place.
We always talk about how, like you're saying, it feels like there's an energy flow to being able to like accept those downloads, but also like not have it get stuck in some pocket of trauma that you have internally.
It's interesting because I find most people's problems rise from not knowing themselves really well, believe it or not. Yeah. And, like not understanding that they procrastinate or how they come off or interact with other people. Or the other thing is having a lot of doubt. Having any kind of doubt is,
that's me.
It reminds me of there's a story I always like to tell. I was watching The Exorcist, the one from the 70s, one night by myself. I was just like, oh, I get so scared with those
by
things.
Yourself? You're braver than I am.
Well, okay, I had my little chihuahua, but that's but the elder priest is telling the younger priest was a psychiatrist, and he was saying, don't listen to the demon. The demon will take lies and, quickly interject a truth and then a lie, and it will throw you off and get you confused. And once you get confused, you're very ineffective. And so he goes in there to try to take the demon out. The demon starts mimicking the priest's mom, who had just passed away, and saying, why you do this to me, why you let me die like this, and guilting him, and got him very confused. Yeah. And then it shows you like because he's a good person and he cares and he takes on that guilt, it basically renders him helpless for a short amount of time. But most of us, I think, once we start getting confused and not having a clear trajectory about what we want, where we're going, then things start to kind of go downhill. It's very powerful if you think about it.
Dimitri.
Me too.
I think we all are a little bit.
I think we are all Dimitri.
But the point being that, if you know what your few non-negotiables are, and you know what you value, what are your fundamental values, and, you have some familiarity with your actions, knowing who you are, who you're not, it really helps with a lot of things. And, that can be learned through intuition as well, because it's in a way I look at it as not just being able to, interpret the future or heal from the past. It has a lot to do with the evolution of our soul and embracing the energy and, growing our consciousness to be able to see in a very conscious way, like, what the world is, and helpful interactions, advantageous, things that we do as opposed to non-helpful things.
Yeah. So a combination of like identifying your own personal non-negotiables plus, or your values as well. Would you say that's like kind of like a roadmap that you should be using to navigate life? Or does having those things help you actually manifest the things that you want?
Probably both.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. They help me to manifest the things that I want. And, also I think a lot of us tend to, be able to see the future, and we ignore it, or we don't. Like, for example, many, many years ago, in the first, real estate that I had purchased, I had a motorcycle at the time, and I was just cruising around neighborhoods, and
that's
all of a
very
sudden,
cool.
I saw this loft, and the loft was, fairly new. However, the entire neighborhood was burnt out. And for one split second, I saw that the neighborhood was full of nightclubs and people, and, that the real estate had, basically quadrupled there.
Wow.
And so I thought, I have to get this place. And it was the downfall of the, real estate market at the time. And it took probably a year to get it, but that became very fortuitous, and it really made a payoff, because that's exactly what happened to the neighborhood.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But my point being also that the things I had to go through to take out that loan, and like borrowing money from people, like Uncle Guido's going to come break your legs if you're not paying this back on time type thing. But my point being that I saw maybe 10 seconds of a flash, and I thought, am I going to trust that and go with it? Because there's some reason that I flashed on that, and I did. I trusted it, and I went with it.
That's really interesting to me, because like a lot of times, like in the phase of life that I am right now, if I am met with any kind of resistance, I've been choosing to accept it as a redirect instead of something that I should maybe power through, because I have a tendency to push and power through and try to force stuff to happen. And I'm trying to kind of get out of that mindset a little bit to try and figure out what's right. But I'm having a hard time juggling which one at which time. Because that's a great example of like, you had a vision and you knew a thing, and even though it might have been difficult, you powered through, and it paid out.
You need to have some precognitive visions.
Well, I recommend things like that, of not sharing them with people, because people will, discourage, and, oh, that's just crazy. But, the thing with you saying that you're the confusion, or really all you have to do is just step back and ask yourself, is there a more advantageous way to redirect the energy? And if you know how to be in a space of neutrality, and you have a definitive question, it is so much easier than what you think. I think people get very, they want to make this something really, really complicated. And once you understand certain concepts, it really isn't. When I, design an intuitive program for someone, I like to know, like, what is their greatest skills, because we don't need more mediocrity, right? We want to, perfect something and focus on the skill that we use primarily, that we know the best. And even if it's our analytical mind, or, just feelings, and work with that. Which I think is where people go wrong, because they're trying to learn off of some random, psychic program that got created, that they're not really resonating with it. And it's energy. So, you have to really resonate with it and connect with it in order to want to do it.
So you're asking, what's your strongest skill in terms of like your feelings, or you're an empath, or you an analytical mind, like that kind of thing? Not like, I'm very good at math or like a good writer or whatever, that kind of thing. Yeah, I see.
Yeah, or like naturally inherent abilities. Like my husband is extremely intellectual and I'm completely the opposite. We always joke like us together, we make a full brain because I'm the feeling side and he's the fact side. And, one of the things I started learning after being married so many years too, is that I needed to start to evolve a little bit more to the analytical side because the feeling side became very unbalanced when I'm basing things just strictly off of feelings. And
right.
And once I learned that, it was just extremely helpful.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I've beat around the bush a little bit, and I really need to ask you more about how you use math in your readings. I'm so curious about that because I haven't heard anybody say that before. And you're saying you specifically said geometry, vectors, abstract maths.
Yeah, I keep telling my husband like he needs to record to explain what I do because I feel like he explains it far better than I do. So basically, like if we think of a very simple kind of dialing on a cell phone, right? It like you punch in a 5 and that 5 has, it's a energy, right? That can be reduced to a mathematical equation or some type of math, right? And if you punch in enough digits, then you're going to call another phone that's going through the air. That signal, that energy becomes information. However, it has to have some mathematical quality to it you understand what I'm saying? To receive the phone number. Now that's on a very basic level. And when we start to expand and look at, equations and all of these other things, it's I just start to break everything down in my head, every cause and effect, every action, reaction, like it all has a quality that can be reduced. Yeah. And mathematics is something that we're discovering, not something that we're making up. Right. And if we look at sacred geometry and how everything can be reduced to a certain equation, or even if you look at the megahertz, like the music that they put out, like binaural beats that have certain megahertz. And, it's all built off a frequency. And so I like to know, where does this, live in nature? There's ways of calculating certain things that is, always ends up being a specific equation, every single thing on this earth. Essentially, I'm just using the energy, the patterns, all of it and breaking it down into an equation and then observing that information. It's all information.
Please correct me if I'm so off on this. It feels like every person might have kind of their own geometry that they radiate in a way, but all the negative self-beliefs or doubts and stuff make it not as symmetrical as it could be, and how to sift through that to make it make sense. That's
one way. Or if we look at like electrocardiogram or just things like that, how you're recording like the energy of something, and how that can be received is through the same, like an earthquake. It's like a 5.7 magnitude. That's all based off of mathematics in terms of the energy that is being transferred.
It's fascinating because that is so different from the way my brain works or like understands things. I'm just like, what? Literally just
Lauren,
listening.
we are sitting in front of an Avant-Garde Intuitive.
I know, and I'm stunned. So I'm like, I just get like pictures of things. I'm like, wow, what a simpleton.
No, trust me. I am too. Yeah.
So,
no, ma'am, I don't think so.
I like being a person who works in audio a lot. Like I think in frequencies a lot, and like
you think in frequency. I'm gonna leave.
No, stay.
No, please stay.
I always think like what the lessons that I learned from going to audio engineering school, like, I know frequencies have a certain, resonance and even frequencies, like if you apply a frequency to like, I'm sure you've seen those videos, to like a pile of sand or whatever, that frequency will form some sacred geometry. It's very,
exactly.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So you've seen that before.
I've seen that.
Yeah. So
my brain doesn't do that. Mia takes energy in her brain, and she takes other people's energy and creates a whole equation.
Are
you
like it's like everything else though? Like if we think of a calendar and putting down 365 days or, and like calculating those things, like that's central to everything that we do. If you build a home, you have to know what the measurements are to fit together, right? And if you take that and elaborate on that, for example, if I give you the schematics to a home and you start building it, you can see the trajectory of where the, laid out mathematics are taking you to build that structure, and knowing that you have to have more, foundation on the bottom, if that makes sense. Like in another way.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. How many of us are walking around with, using your metaphor, a severe lack of weight-bearing components to the houses that we are? And is there like a common denominator of like what we are all missing or needing to work on?
How many of us lost the blueprint to our own energy?
Well, that's a really good way of putting it. And I do call it like a blueprint or a schematic, like of our own energy. I think a lot, unfortunately, because of social media and, so many things in this world that don't reflect what's actually occurring or the reality of something. Yeah, definitely.
That really helped. Okay. That helped a lot to think about it in terms of a blueprint for a home.
Well, our hearts and minds emit electricity, right?
Yeah.
And there's actually a machine that they don't even have to hook you up to it. They can, just put like electrodes on you, but you're not connected to the actual machine. And it can take a baseline of your emotions through your heart and mind activity and kind of tell, like, are you angry most of the time? Are you exactly? Yeah, because, all of that, like people that are perpetually angry, you feel it, right? You're responding to your electromagnetic field is responding to it. And so they can take that and, break that down into frequencies because of the heart rate or the mind activity, if that makes sense.
I think that's if we're going to talk about our greatest skills and working on those, I think that might be mine. I know exactly what's gone on with my family by the time, if they just walk into the house, it's the first time I've seen them all day.
Yeah.
I'm immediately like, what's up? You feel this way. You read
the frequencies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the closest thing I have to like an actually like daily use of any intuitive ability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're reading the frequencies and, becoming absorbed in them to a certain point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always tell Lauren, when Lauren's in a bad, listen, I get in terrible mood sometimes, but when Lauren's in a bad mood, I'm like, I don't want to have to put up a wall like between us, because I want to be able to trust that we can like be open about our emotions, because sometimes Lauren's
an
not
empath. So I like either other people take my energy and I'm like, I'm just so depleted, or I accidentally like pack it on myself and I don't like realize it. Frank's always like, you need to do an assessment. What's going on?
Yeah.
Lauren, understanding how to own and ground your space would be so helpful for you, because it really, you just want to be able to receive information that's pertinent to you, not all the other garbage and people's opinions. And, and I think that just giving yourself permission to be in that space is a really big one, because it feels like you feel somehow responsible, or like you can do something about it. And I think it bothers you. Yeah. It like if you're telling somebody, no, I can't take you to the store, without like a huge long backup story of, why you're unable to, like, I'm sorry, I broke my leg. It could keep going on, right? Because you're feeling like, but I could drive with a broken leg, but that guilt just like draws you in.
Wow, that is, I think it's so really accurate.
That's another way that just learning how to use intuition and learning how to, prevent that flow of energy going into you. And one thing that it's so funny, because I studied for so many years about all these things, and I realized, like, we come across narcissists, they're like, vampirism is an actual clinical term nowadays, if you can believe that. It is a medical term, and it comes in many forms. But, if you just feel somebody's energy and how it's all going toward them and being sucked in, immediately, or how they're talking and the energy's just going in, then run for the hills. They're a narcissist.
Yeah.
But the good news is they're the type of empaths that, they'll keep doing things because they need to. They want the attention. They want to say, yeah, I did that. You're not one of those. You're very sincere in what you're doing. And, that's the best type of empath. You just have to give yourself permission to own and ground your space and say no without the backup story and guilt.
Oh, the backup story. Frank has been helping me with that for years now. I've gotten better at it, but yeah, it is so true. Maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, someone asked me if I wanted to do something, and it was literally what you said, like, oh, well, I could fit it in between this thing and that thing, but I don't actually want to, but I could. And instead of like providing this whole list of excuses or reasons why, I just said, I can't do that this weekend. Maybe next weekend. And I was so proud of myself. It's such a small thing.
I've recently heard of this described as a sacred no.
I love it.
To like protect your own like energy.
Yeah.
And like, you don't need to give a laundry list of excuses. And I always tell Lauren, especially if you're around someone who like, loves the argument, like the more things you list out as your reason why, you're just giving them more to argue against. So it makes your job and your life a little harder.
Like too. Our daughter.
Do what, she's 6. She's going to do what she does. Yeah. She's going to make it hard no matter what. But
yeah, it's like I feel like I have to for some reason, because I have the time, or because I have not a strong enough. I used to not have a strong enough no, in my opinion, and everyone else's time. I made it more valuable than mine. Having kids did help with that, but yeah, thank you. That's exactly what I've been working on.
Yeah, but in your case, it's not something that is like that you need therapy for. It comes from such a pure place of compassion and really, really wanting to, it's interesting because your energy is kind of in a different time when people were community organized and, helped each other and depended on community, and just meaning your energy is still in that time. And so I think when someone isn't helping someone or being there for them, it's like almost inexplicable, because, you're still just deeply rooted in a different time. That was a much kinder time, essentially.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, that checks out.
Yeah. Wow.
But nowadays, more people, there's, I think, more narcissists that they really prey on people like you that, you know, are helpful and lovely. And, you know, I think it's really improved. And this is the first time I've ever met you. So these are just observations.
No, you're getting it.
Yeah, my God.
Narcissists see Lauren and they start doing this thing with their hands and licking their chops and they're ready. They're ready for a meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy target. I mean, I got to let you go. You are far too generous with your time. And
I think I kept you guys too long. Were there any other questions that you wanted to ask, or did we miss it?
What I do want to do
about the actual show, our personal stuff.
They're amazing.
Where can people find your work? Like, where can people find you?
Well, my webpage is prescienceLife.com, and it's just the word pre-science. And, you know, prescience is basically the art of knowing events before they take place. So just think of pre-science life, but it's pronounced prescience life. And I'm all over Yelp, and I hope to be redoing my website a little bit to put out more information out there. And I'm also considering doing. I know I'm gonna talk to you about that too, because I need your help. Please. I've just been so incredibly busy the past month or so. But I'm really excited, and just thinking about putting myself out there to speak with people and promote this, because I feel like happiness, intuition, success, they're inextricably linked. Yeah. Because it's our energy, it's us, it's how are we interacting with other people, with forces, with situations? How are we, responding as, opposed to reacting and things like that? So, yeah.
Amazing.
But that's where I can be found. Thank you so much for asking.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. You have been amazing. You're awesome. It was so nice to meet you.
Thank you. You guys are awesome too. And anything you think I can help with, I'm always happy. I love helping people.
Oh, thank you.
And same. Please reach out.
Have a great one. Okay. Bye, Mia.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Visit www.clairvoyaging.com for show notes, merch, or just to say hi. If you'd like to support our journey, visit www.buymeacoffee.com/clairvoyaging. This has been a production of Wayfeather Media.